name is Mairead Corrigan. I'm from the School of Medicine, Dentistry and Biomedical Sciences. I'm a senior lecturer in the Centre for Medical Education, where I'm also the academic lead for equality, diversity and inclusion, and I'm also a member of the Racial Equity Champions Network.
My name is Paddy O'Connor. I'm a lecturer in education at the School of Psychology. I'm of mixed Irish and Zambian descent. I'm the co-champion for equity, diversity and inclusion within the School of Psychology, and I'm also one of the champions on the Racial Equity Network.
My name is Magdalena Rychlowska. I'm Polish, I'm a carer, I'm a lecturer in the School of Psychology, and together with Paddy, I co-direct the group for equity, diversity and inclusion in the School of Psychology. I'm also a member of the Racial Equity Network at Queen's.
I am Ikhlas El Karim. I am a clinical reader and a consultant in restorative dentistry. As a clinical academic, I work. My work is divided between the Center of Dentistry, where I do my clinical, my teaching and clinical care for the patients, and also I'm affiliated to the Center of Experimental Medicine, where I do my research. I am the EDI lead for the Center of Dentistry, and I'm also a RIC champion in the School of Medicine, Dentistry and Biomedical Sciences.
My name is Sharice Henry. I'm from the School of Medicine. I'm currently a 5th-year medical student. I was previously a part of the CME Equality, Diversity and Inclusion working group, and I'm also a 5th-year representative for the Northern Ireland Medical School Committee. So initially I got involved with the Equality and Diversity Inclusion Working Group because Dr Corrigan, she sent out an email to all students, asking students who would like to be involved to just have conversations to see what more the Centre of Medical Education could do to support students, not only minority students, but also students from other minority groups such as LGBTQ+, and also those who are sexism or any sort of things that they may have been experiencing, and let us basically come out and tell the school what we would like them to do, because it also came on the backdrop of Black Lives Matter during that previous time, where there was a bit of, students were a bit upset, especially minority students, concerning where does the school stand in supporting students. So it was a great relief to see that the school was quite interested in hearing our concerns.
My role as academic lead for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion came about after the General Medical Council, who are our regulatory body, visited us in 2017, and they recognised that while EDI was in the curriculum, that it more needed to be done in terms of diversifying the curriculum. And so I was appointed in the role as EDI lead to kind of lead on that. And since then, there have been a number of guidance documents produced by organisations like the British Medical Association, which provides guidance for medical schools in addressing racial harassment. So as a medical school, we signed up to the BMA Charter to protect against racial harassment, and Sharice was a member of that working group to implement that charter. So I suppose that has kind of very much influenced what we've been doing in the medical school. So there were 4 recommendations from the BMA Charter. One of those was to encourage students to report when they do experience racism. So in the medical school, we are piloting at the moment in year 4 anonymous reporting to encourage students to report if they experience racism or any discriminatory behaviours on campus, but on clinical placement, because we also did a survey to identify students' experiences of bullying, harassment and racism, and we found that this was more likely to happen on clinical placement. So we're providing support there for students, and also we're also piloting some pastoral support in one of the trusts to support students who do experience racism and any other discrimination while in placement. So that those have been recent initiatives this year. And that's been led by a couple of clinicians in one of the trusts as well. And then another thing that we've done in response to the BMA Charter is we have been rolling out active bystander training, again to encourage students to stand up for each other if they do witness or experience racism and discriminatory behaviour. And that active bystander training was developed in relation with students, and Sharice, you were a member of that group. We met online during COVID, with students across years 1 to 5, and as a result of those meetings, we developed the active bystander training then. So that's rolled out, and then we're also diversifying the curriculum as well and working with students to do that.
My really involvement and motivation for EDI is personal. I am a woman and a woman of color, and so using my background and also my experience with the positive and negatives of it, I am currently working really to try to help develop and implement EDI within my workplace. I currently am the EDI lead for dentistry. Our program of work is really at the beginning. We're in the early stages. We have just developed or established our EDI committee. We got help and support from Marie because she's the head of us in this process. We have outlined our terms and conditions for the committee. The committee is made up of staff and students. We have the agenda really and plans that are aiming for simple things like, for example, raising awareness, but also we have plans for how we can facilitate decolonization or diversifying the curriculum in all the modules that are taught in dentistry. So it is still a work in progress, but we have started, we have developed and established a committee, and we are hoping to see our plans in the outcome of our plans in the near future.
Dr. Corrigan, she was great at she basically put us all into groups as subgroups, and then we all just wrote all the things that we wish the school could have done, and she took upon all of those suggestions. She went with the Center of Medical Education and she saw where they could help, things that may take a bit more longer to be implemented, but certain things such as like the bystander training, in which a lot of the students really wanted. I found that was quite amazing to see that they took the students' ideas on, they developed the plan, and then it was started to be rolled out, especially with the first year and second year students. Because me especially, I found that a lot of my medical school colleagues would like to help out when it comes to racial discrimination, but they aren't quite equipped to know what to say, what to do, what could be helpful or what would actually be offensive. So it was a great start. And then it also showed where we basically could work together as a team, especially with having counselors in place with the pilot that they did, because we also expressed that there are oftentimes students would experience discrimination, but they will often rely on their minority colleagues to talk with, and having someone who, especially a senior, where they can just go to and just basically talk about it, even if they don't want it to be something that is reported, but just get it off their chest. So having these pilots being implemented was really like a breath of fresh air to see that the school is actually trying as best as they can to support us. So it has been like a great experience just walking along with the team and Dr. Corrigan. So I'm originally from the Caribbean, so Caribbean to Belfast is quite different. Culture-wise, I felt like it's a bit similar in terms of people being friendly towards one another, but it's quite different because I find that here it's usually people, they already know each other and they already form like their own groups, especially coming out of sixth form. A lot of the, for example, in medicine, they all know each other, so they tend to stick with each other. And for myself and a lot of other students who are not from Northern Ireland, we found it to be very hard to sort of integrate. So it's not as if people don't want to speak with you, and it's not that they don't want to communicate, but it's sort of beyond the superficial friendliness. It doesn't really go beyond that to like develop strong friendships. And this has really been something a lot of the international students would have said. And you would find that even within the groups, all the international students would stick together, even if they come from different countries. But it's just because it's so hard to form those stronger bonds. And I don't feel like the students here are intentionally doing that. I feel like it's possibly just how the culture is. Like once you know someone, you stick with that group until you guys just for generations and generations until you grow old, you will have that same friendship group. But other than that, I feel like in terms of being accepted in the general Belfast area has been good for most people. We would find that some of the students would have experienced a lot of discrimination. I feel like it's more so when they go out to, let's say, peripheral hospitals, and in those regions where they may not have as much diversity, it is a bit harder for them, because then they would be asked questions such as like, where are you from? Where are you really from? And people may or may not have seen someone of a different skin tone. For example, my first experience in a peripheral trust hospital was when a patient has never seen a black person. So a patient was very like your skin tone. It was very like, it was sort of like, it's in that situation where it's the balance between racism and curiosity and people just being inquisitive. But sometimes for me personally, because I grew up in the Caribbean, I was raised there, I only moved away for tertiary education. So my self-esteem was mostly based on not my skin tone, because everyone looked like me. So it wasn't something that was like, I didn't have much attention on my skin tone. So now coming here in these countries where I'm now the minority, where previously was a majority, it takes you back a little bit. But for me personally, it hasn't harmed me as much, because my self-esteem was basically formed before I moved. But then in comparison to a lot of my colleagues who, they came to either these places when they were younger or they were born here, it kind of takes them back, because it's something that they constantly go through. So it's sort of like a repetitive trauma. So you often find like every time they experience it, it takes them back a bit, and they're often more or less traumatized. And that's why we really wanted a counselor, especially in CME. I know there's counselors here at the school at large, but a counselor from a minority group was one that we really felt like we needed, because there were a lot of students that just needed someone to talk to. They needed someone who would have basically understand the profession, medicine, and someone who looked like them, so that they don't have to explain why the microaggressions affected them the way it has. And yeah, so that's mainly one of the reasons why we like the pilot, and we hope that in the future it would be something that all the trusts would have, and the CME on a whole would have someone that students could just go to and talk to, because it's really impacting a lot of the students currently.
It is good really to hear it from students' perspectives and someone who is younger, of course, than us. And I think it's for staff, it might be a little bit different, because you come in as mature person, you already sort of come with, as you said, the built-in confidence in yourself and your ability. And as I mentioned earlier, that my interest in this whole ADI is really personal, because I am different, and I am using this difference as a strength. I'm presenting myself, I am different, I am unique, and I am doing something maybe is not available for the majority of the people here. So taking it from that perspectives and thinking of yourself, you are in a strength position, not a weakness position, then it makes a big difference the whole way you look at it. So for me, I think that has helped me a lot throughout my career. It empowered me feeling that I am different, I am providing something different, I am unique. And if you get yourself into that mentality, I think it will help you settle and help you feel in your side yourself, you are valued from your inside, and then automatically you feel that you will be valued by the people surrounding you. So I think living here in Belfast for more than 20 years, that indicates maybe that I have settled very well and I didn't find any issues, otherwise I wouldn't be here for more than 20 years, I think, in Northern Ireland.
The need for students to have pastoral support, to have someone that they can talk to if they experience racism or discrimination. That was very much brought out by the BMA Charter, but again, it very much came out from our survey that we did among the students as well, that students would have relied on friends and family to confide, and they were unlikely to report to the medical school if they did experience racism or discrimination, because there is a fear of repercussions from clinical staff who are supervising their training. And also students found as well that they weren't quite sure if the incidents they were experiencing were serious enough. So as Sharice mentioned, people just, asking you where you're from, or, and, which we now, know is like a microaggression, but students are, it's usually, kind of like a pattern then as students realise, that it's the impact that it has for students really. So they were unsure whether to report something like that, and so students on the back of the active bystander training. I've been meeting with different groups of students from different protected characteristics, and they've also been talking about having peer support, because we are working towards identifying staff in the medical school to provide the pastoral support for students who do want to talk about experiences of racism and discrimination. But at the moment then, over the summer, I've worked with students in developing a workshop for students who are from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups to provide peer support to one another. So that's something that we're hoping to roll out to students next year. And as well, the experiences that Sharice has been talking about, I do feed that into training as well, that I deliver to our examiners for OSCEs, which is Objective Structured Clinical Examinations. So they're clinicians who would examine students in doing clinical role plays, and also our simulated patients as well, so that they're aware of what microaggressions are, and so that kind of I very much use the students' experience and integrate that into training. And then what Sharice was saying about local students kind of very much keeping to themselves. The role of social capital and social networks has found to be, really important in helping to explain, the awarding gap that exists among Black, Asian, minority ethnic students across all universities. We also have that, the awarding gap exists within the medical schools as well. So we're, kind of looking at that. When we're looking at assessments, we're looking at students' protected characteristics to see is there a difference in how students from different protected characteristics are performing in written exams, as well as the OSCE clinical stations. We are going to be piloting something next year as well to try to, provide more support, for students who, are at risk or who are experiencing, the awarding gap.
Mentally, I'm pretty sure you guys know better than me, mentally the effects of racism, especially on a growing child and as they reach into adulthood. So recognizing where people are at that place, and then also still having a bit of grace for those who aren't really up to speed as yet with knowing that they are harming others. We may at some point if people are willing to change and if people are willing to try to live harmoniously with the community, we may at some point reach a stage where we disagree, we have a conversation, we discuss why it's offensive, we discuss how we can make things better and right or wrong, and hopefully we can get there at some point.
It is always people always talk about, oh, this is our issue, this is our problems. Yes, there is always going to be issues and problems, regardless with whether it is ADI or other issues. But as long as the people start together and do something about it and work for it, and I think this work now, the RIC network and the RIC network work now is the first step in the right direction, and hopefully with the effort and the plans and the program that is going to be developed and implemented, we can see the solution for all the problems that we are talking about today. So the future is bright.
So Magda and I, we both lead our school's Equity, Diversity and Inclusion group, and it was really set up on the back of a lot of the great work that our SWAN committee does.
It took us some time to accept that decolonizing and diversifying the curriculum just takes time, and it's only now after extensive training that we start to notice some patterns and think about potential solutions or change to be made in the future.